With eyes and thoughts for nothing but the landscape, indifferent to fame and material gains, living in seclusion in a forest, reciting poetry beside a brook to the music of the Qin. This is Ji Kang, one of the 7 sages of the bamboo grove, as he is described in historical records. His favorite piece of music was called Guangling San. A legend is told about how he first heard it.
传说啊，嵇康早年曾在洛水之西游学。一天晚上，他在住所独自弹琴。夜半时分，突然来了一位自称是古人的神秘客人，与嵇康啊切磋音律，两人谈得十分投机。客人来了兴致，向嵇康要个5弦琴，弹了一曲《广陵散》。
To Ji Kang's ear, the melody was at the same time as soft as silk and as hard as metal. At one moment, it was soaring to the heavens, and the next, plunging into silence before leaping to life once again. It was like something from another world. After he finished playing, the stranger gave the score to Ji Kang, telling him never to pass it to anyone else. Then he disappeared, as suddenly as he had appeared. Ji Kang was the author of A Composition on the Qin. Among his contemporaries, the work was hailed as a serious probe into musical theory. In another article on the absence of sentiments in music, he explored the relationship between music and feelings, education and moralizing. Ji Kang regarded music as a blessing from Mother Nature. It was like a fragrance in the air. Music wasn't changed by a shift of someone's mood. That's why he believed that music was neither sad nor pleasant.
它的基本意思就是说，声，它指的是大自然当中的客观的那种声音，各种各样的声音，包括人声。哀乐是人的主观情感体验，他认为声音本身是不存在，没有什么哀乐之说的，声音就是声音。 但是，只有当人的主观的情感体验和客观的声音结合在一起的时候，这个时候才有哀乐。
Before Ji Kang, others had attempted to explore the origins of music and its role in society. However, little work had been done to study musical moods and rhythms. Feng Youlan, a 20th century historian, described Ji Kang's On the Absence of Sentiments in Music as the first serious attempt to explore the nature of music. Ji Kang was not a prolific writer of poetry, but he did leave behind some 60 works, of which the most admired are his 4-character line verses. Wang Fuzhi, who was a philosopher at the time of the late Ming and early Qing dynasties, described Ji Kang's poetry as a unique charm under an elegant form. The appeal of Ji Kang's poetry lies in the unique artistic conception. In one poem he wrote, "Music and poetry are alike entertainment. I am alone, but not lonely, needing nothing from others. My imagination, if not soaring above mountains, I guard carefully inside, where it rests." Many of his poems were set to a Qin accompaniment. The Qin is a type of zither, and it was Ji Kang's favorite musical instrument. In a preface to his essay, A Composition on the Qin, he wrote that the Qin makes a perfect gentleman, whereas other instruments do not. Ji Kang's extolling of the virtues of the Qin made playing it a favourite aesthetic pursuit among ancient scholars. Along with painting and poetry composition, it was considered a key element in the perfect lifestyle for a scholar. As a leading figure in arts and literary circles in the mid-3rd century, Ji Kang left 15 essays. In them, he described his thoughts on the universe, society, and human life. Even though he lived in seclusion, Ji Kang was not immune to social changes. A jian was a form of writing in which a subject admonished a monarch. Ji Kang wrote a jian in which he eulogized the virtues of ancient rulers and denounced the decadent monarchs that had followed them. In writing it, he believed he was helping the rulers of his day. Ji Kang was a Taoist. To him, the honesty that had prevailed in society in previous eras and the simple, frugal lifestyle that had been pursued by rulers had been a source of peace and popular satisfaction. With time, however, society and culture had been transformed, as monarchs based their rule not on simplicity and honesty, but on benevolence and righteousness.
嵇康说，这样一来，就会有更多的人去运用巧诈来实现自己的目的。倡导仁义会使人丧失天性，更多的人就会更加贪图私利。
To Ji Kang, a perfect society would be ruled by an unassuming monarch and populated by compliant and dutiful subjects.
They were both admired and condemned. No one doubted their talents for music and writing. But amid the political turmoil of the mid-3rd century, their unconventional attitudes were bound to prove dangerous. So they sought a refuge where they could record their radical beliefs in writing. This is the continuing story of the 7 sages of the Bamboo Grove.
In another of his writings called Discourse on Individuality, Ji Kang criticized what he saw as the prevailing sinfulness of society. He claimed that the problems had begun with Emperor Wu Di of Han, who 400 years earlier in the 2nd century BC had outlawed all schools of philosophy with the exception of Confucianism. Scholars were encouraged to study Confucianism as a way of gaining recognition and official positions. Ji Kang argued that morality was undermined when philosophical pursuit became an investment in personal advancement. In his essay, Ji Kang called for a return to the basic precepts of human nature in both academic and non-academic pursuits. Ji Kang was critical of those who were motivated by personal gain. To Ji Kang, a return to the basic precepts of human nature and acceptance of the natural laws were the way to achieve benevolence and kindness.
嵇康的意思，认自然就是认心之自然啊，越明教就是越明教背后的虚伪的言行。 所以他越明教而人自然，它的本质就是反对言行当中的一些虚伪的表现。
However, society at the time was success-oriented. People would stop at nothing for personal gain, whether in the form of recognition or official position. It was hard for a man of insight like Ji Kang to find his place in society. Disgusted, he took refuge among mountains and forests. There, he devoted himself to seeking the ultimate truth in nature. He wrote essays denouncing the decline in society, and every word he wrote dripped with venom. But his ideas were revolutionary, and they contradicted prevailing practices and thinking. He praised two historical figures, Guanshu and Caishu, even though they were both denounced by more orthodox thinkers such as Lord Zhou and Confucius himself. He even challenged the Confucian canon in the Six Classics. He said, "One is not always in darkness without reading it, and not always in daylight after reading it." Ultimately, Ji Kang's radical views would lead to his execution on the orders of Sima Zhao. Ruanji was another of the seven sages of the Bamboo Grove who held unorthodox views. As a leading figure in the Xuanxue or Mysterious Learning School of metaphysical philosophy, he wrote extensively. As the late Ming Dynasty, early Qing Dynasty philosopher Wang Fuzhi wrote, his poetry was never being surpassed in artistry.
阮籍的咏怀诗流传在世的有82首，特色是含蓄深沉。由于曹氏和司马氏两个集团的争权斗争非常激烈，当时的诗人处境十分的艰险，即使对政权不满也不敢直说，因此阮籍的诗歌往往采取隐晦曲折的手法来抒习苦闷。
Unlike Ji Kang, Ruanji did not have the opportunity to continue a carefree life in the mountains. Following the Gaoping mausoleum coup, the Sima family faction summoned him to court.
当时朝中一些人倡导礼法明教，但实际上他们并不真的相信礼法明教，只不过是把礼法和明教当成掩饰他们趋炎附势、贪图荣华的一块盾牌而已。
As someone who was not prepared to compromise his views, Ruanji found the situation at court very difficult. He missed the happy times he had spent in the bamboo grove with his companions. His poetry reveals his frustration. Day after day and night after night, my looks have changed. I howl in pain over my wine, and I miss my old friends. Wine cannot release me, neither can my cries. Humble is my body, lofty is my thought. I have accomplished nothing. Why? Because of the snakes surrounding the dragon. He had been brought up as a Confucian scholar, but now he yearned to break with conformity. After Cao Fang came to power, the court was divided into two factions centered on the Cao family and the Sima family. The never-ending power struggle between the two factions left Ruanji completely disillusioned. In a poem, he lamented the failure of his aspirations. The sun and the moon, the right and the wrong, fortune and misfortune come in turns. Someone has stayed while someone has left. How can I preserve my virtue in a situation like this?
阮籍深深地感到，人世多迎冲的巨变，无异于阴阳错传，天时犹太变否。于是他的希望被失望所代替，建功立业的满腔热情被隐遁的冷漠所代替，而开始崇尚超世的人物缘起和博洋。
They were both admired and condemned. No one doubted their talents for music and writing. But amid the political turmoil of the mid-3rd century, their unconventional attitudes were bound to prove dangerous. So they sought a refuge where they could record their radical beliefs in writing. This is the continuing story of the 7 sages of the Bamboo.
Increasingly, his thoughts turned to 2 historical figures. At the time of the Qing dynasty, disillusioned by the brutality of the emperor, they had quit their official positions and sought a life of seclusion on Mount Zhongnan. One of them was the founder of Taoism, Lao Tzu, who lived in the latter years of the spring and autumn period. The story goes that one day he simply set out on his ox, leading to Hangu Pass, and from there to nobody knew where. In his poetry, Ruanji often revealed his admiration for Lao Tzu and expressed his resolve to act like him. To Ruanji, the reality was neither safe nor happy, and nor did it offer any freedom. The only option was to break free from the reality and throw oneself into the arms of Mother Nature. He elaborated on this belief in an essay, Story of a True Gentleman, which he wrote following a visit to a recluse named Sun Dang. Sun Dang, also known as Gong He, is a legendary figure from the 3rd century. References to him are found in historical records. The history of the Jin dynasty describes Sun Dang as living in a pit he had dug in the ground. In the summer, he dressed in straw clothing, and in winter, he used his long hair to keep warm. He spent his time reading the Book of Changes and playing a single-string zither. He demanded nothing from anyone else, and nothing worried him. He never lost his temper, but on one occasion, 2 passers-by decided to put his legendary good nature to the test.
"有人就想看看他到底会不会发怒，几个人商量好了，就把他扔到一个河里面。结果水灯湿漉漉地爬上来，他不但不恼，而且哈哈大笑，扬长而去。"
This and many other stories about Sun Dang made Ruanji want to meet him. After searching high and low among various mountains, Ruanji finally met his hero.
在现实生活中，心情非常苦闷的阮籍，很希望能够从孙登那里得到一些人生的指点。他怀着诚惶诚恐的心情，向孙登请教太古无问之道之类的重大历史和哲学问题。但是，能够真正悟通大道，而且能够真正做到出世的孙登，对他的话好像 没有听到一样，始终保持沉默。
Disappointed, Ruanji turned to leave. But halfway down the mountain, he heard a noise from Suandang. It was a whistling sound. But strangely, it came not from his mouth, but from his belly.
魏晋的名士们呢，为了避祸而出入山林，游戏林间，尽情享受在现实生活中无法得到的欢愉。这个时候他们就用笑来表达自己的感受。因此在那个时代，笑风盛行，笑也成为名士的风度之一。阮籍在名士当中是最善于笑的人物之一。
Suandang's whistling had the effect of making Ruanji forget all his cares. It also convinced him that he was Suandang's intellectual inferior in the fields of both ideology and art. Inspired, he wrote the essay, Story of a True Gentleman. In it, he described Suandang as a man who took 1,000 miles in a single step and 1,000 years in one day, who sought the ultimate laws of nature without going against them in any way, and who took heaven and earth as his dwelling place. This image had in fact been used earlier by the philosopher Zhuangzi in describing natural and supernatural figures. Ruanji's essay contained a plot which was centered on an orthodox scholar who approached Suandang to question him about his philosophical views. To the scholar, Suandang seemed neither as happy nor as carefree as he was usually depicted. Ruanji's conclusion was that scholars such as Suandang pursued a path of destruction, danger, and ultimately death. In another essay titled On Zhuangzi, Ruanji described a figure travelling between reality and a realm above reality, just as Zhuangzi was thought to have done. Ruanji wrote, "Everything has a lifespan, and death is inevitable in life." From a narrow perspective, everything is big. But from a broader perspective, everything is small. That everything under heaven is equal was a theme Ruanji developed in the essay. Based on it, he expounded on the idea that there are no right or wrong things in this world, only the way of following or not following the natural course. Later scholars have commented that the metaphysical scholars of the mid-3rd century, led by Ruanji, were unique in that they were able to champion idealism in a painful society, explore ways of breaking free, and emancipate themselves from their spiritual shackles.
Seven scholars in the mid-3rd century who take refuge in a bamboo grove. Each of them is talented in his own way. They are musicians and poets, philosophers and essayists. Inevitably, they become objects of jealousy, But what of the internal tensions within the group known as the Seven Sages of the Bamboo Grove?